and I had a bit of a rude awakening this morning. But anyway, that's the way life goes. So, okay, World War III update. Got lots of stuff to cover here, and not very well organized either. So, keep my hair from sticking up anymore. All right, so okay. Hang on. This one is pretty important one too. Yeah, I'm gonna put that one last. I'm gonna go with this one. Okay, yeah, where do I start with all this? There's so much going on right now. And the reason why this one's so important is that, Alex Jones here, shuffle my papers, is that it gives you an idea of just how intense we are in comparison to what we were during the Cold War. During the Cold War, there was a lot of rhetorics and stuff like that, but we're now, it is a proxy war in the sense what's going on in Syria. And people have to understand that it's not a war against Assad, it's a war against Russia and China. And the main responders in it is Russia and China's in the vaccines. And we got to go back to that airstrike the other night because there's been a lot happening since then. Now, right now, the distraction, I'm just going to close that curtain a bit. The distraction on the TV is the terrorist attack, which they're not calling a terrorist attack completely because they don't want to damage the, again in the States, 800 refugees showed up, or claimant refugees showed up, and they made them citizens automatically. So they want to keep people to do stuff like that, and people are already pissed enough as it is. So they're covering this, the bombings in New York and New Jersey and the other place there, and the stabbing very lightly. Again, they call it terrorism, but it's not global terrorism. It's not ISIS. It's just a domestic terrorism. It's terrorism. people aren't going to be that. They're not easy to do that much. Holy jeez, that sounds really good. So that's the distraction that everybody's following. Meanwhile, again, I haven't heard it on the mainstream media at all. Is not so much the airstrike in Syria that killed Syrian soldiers, but it's what's happened in the past couple of days. You can see the escalation and build-up. I always said that World War III will break out as a black swan event, and I'm still holding to that because we don't know what's going to happen. And I still say it won't happen until after Putin plays the wild man, which he hasn't done yet, although the deliberate things that have happened in the past night or two can be a sign of getting ready for that. It's a build-up to the crazy man, the wild man, that, oh my God, the world's going to take notice. We have to go back to Putin's speech where last month, I guess it was, or a couple of weeks ago anyway, where he was saying, have you realized what you've done? You've broken every treaty. You've got us on the brink. Russia will respond. Back off. Are you guys insane? Et cetera, et cetera. How do we get? What can we say to get through to you? We're not messing around. So let's go back to the airstrike. The airstrike, okay, was coming out on the deal, where the United States will not release the minutes for the meeting with John Kerry and Lavrov and all of them over the Syrian agreement. The Russians want it released, and they don't want to release the information. Because I think what's going to happen is the Russians, what they've been doing is, you tell us who the moderate rebels are, and we won't hit them. The problem is the moderate rebels are the ISIS guys. Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda turned into Al-Nusra. Al-Nusra is now Al-Asham or whatever, and then ISIS is now Daesh or whatever. And it goes and it goes. They just keep changing the name. But they all, al-Baghdadi is still the leader of, this is John McCain's buddies. These are all, this is all because, Syria would not be burning if it wasn't for U.S. foreign policy and Israeli foreign policy for the Greater Israel Project. And again, if you don't know about the Greater Israel Project, you need to go look into that, and then you'll understand the Middle East perfectly. Everything they were talking about during the Greater Israel Project is not a coincidence that we're seeing what we're seeing now. It is a byproduct of the plan that was put in. Again, it's agitation to get it to do this, rather than direct. It's not so direct. That's why they call it a proxy war. It's not direct. They try to hide the links as much as possible, but it's showing up in the weaponry. The more U.S.-made weaponry that is in the hands of the rebels, that type of thing. The fact that these rebels are so intertwined with what was called the moderate opposition. There was a Free Syrian Army at one point, but it got hijacked clearly. So these are all radical jihadists, but they're really a proxy army to overthrow Assad. That's all they are. And that airstrike that hit Assad's positions, this is the third time this has happened, was to do something that Russia was going for. Again, Russia was calling a bluff here. What they were saying was, you tell us who the moderate rebels are, we won't hit them, but then they could point out, you're backing these guys are guys who are terrorists. That's why they keep taking things, like Al-Qaeda is no longer on the terrorist watch list in the States. They're not on there. Why? Because whenever it comes out that, yes, these guys are being backed and paid for by the United States, then, oh, well, no, they weren't even on the terrorist watch list. But they were on there and they took them off, because people are now figuring out who's backing it. And at this point, I don't know how anybody can, well, if you're not following it, I get it. You know, it sounds unbelievable, but when you understand, if you've been following these World War III updates, you pretty much get a good picture of what's going on. If you understand the Syrian war as, you know, regime change, that's one thing. You still probably won't understand why the United States and Israel and all of them and 40 other European nations, and unfortunately Canada too, why we're backing ISIS. And then on the other hand, say we've got to fight terror. You won't understand it. But if you understand it as a war against Russia and China, the world being divided into two, the Anglo-American transatlantic petrodollar empire versus the Eurasian Pacific, China, India, Russia, Iran, and the BRICS nations as the other empire fighting for supremacy, then you understand more what's going on in Syria in the longer game. And it's probably even more complicated than that, but to dumb it down. So in this airstrike, okay, the Australians, the UK, Turkey, and I think a few others did that airstrike together. Now, the reason why they did this is very simple. The Russians were really demanding two things in this meeting. The first thing they were demanding was, tell us who the moderate rebels are. Now, they're doing that as a call of bluff, because they know as soon as you start pointing out who the moderate rebels are, you're telling us, they're going to be basically saying, yes, we're backing ISIS. So that's why they keep changing the name of ISIS. So it's like, okay, you're going to call yourselves this now, and we're going to say, no, this is the new moderate group. And that's why the U.S. keeps changing the name of the moderate rebels. That they keep changing. And then as soon as people catch on that, okay, this is not the... And again, you can track it. They went from Al-Qaeda to Al-Nusra to Al-Asham to the Arab Democracy Army, or whatever the heck they're calling them now. And there's like 1,100 jihadi factions in there, roughly. So there might be more than that, but there's just spin-off. These are guys from little towns. Some of these guys are just downright crazy jihadists. Some of these guys are mercenaries. If you pay them, they fight for you. The other guy pays them more, they fight for them. It's dirty, right? Now, and then, of course, the rest are just, it's a proxy army to fight Assad. Because as soon as Syria falls, then they can take out Iran. And then after Iran, it's Russia and China. So, and then once it gets to Russia and China, we're in a full-out war. Now, I don't think it's going to get to Iran. I think Iran's going to get bypassed, and we're just going to go right to Russia and China at some point because of what's going on now. These are big things. So the airstrikes takes out Syrian soldiers. Guaranteed, they probably killed Russians in this. Like I've been saying for a while. I bet you there's dead CIA and Mossad and FSB or whichever the foreign Russian secret Spetsnaz and stuff like that. They're probably dead all over Syria. We're not going to see it on the 6 o'clock news. Why? Because it's covert. It's 5 vs 5, right? But I think they did that. So the night after, or so, one last thing that's going to happen here is that the deal, okay, of telling us who the moderate rebels are, which the United States hasn't defined yet, and they're not going to, they can't, because if they do, they show their hand, right? The second one is a coalition between Russia and the United States to take out ISIS together, to share intelligence to take out ISIS together. Well, this airstrike kills that possibility, that there's no way we're going to work together, you just killed our guys. So that's the United States saying, they didn't hit these guys on accident. They did not hit these guys on accident. They hit them on purpose. Al-Nusra, all the ISIS guys were surrounding the town and whatever. These guys were way on the other side of a mountain. They were deliberately, you had to go out of your way to hit them. They hit them, and of course, it supported the rebels. They got, again, ISIS, the luckiest jihadists in the world. The airstrike just happened to work in our favor, so we can retake that area again. And that's what they did. So that's what's going on there. Now, there was something that Assad said last week or the week before, that Aid will not come into Syria without inspection, and they will not take aid from Turkey. They'll take UN aid, but they won't take it from Turkey, because Turkey is just basically supplying the rebels and feeding the ISIS guys. So there was an airstrike again. Now they're blaming the Russians, but it could have been the Syrians. It could have been, who knows who did it. And we don't even know if it was a UN food convoy. We can't even, but the U.S. is already out there saying that. So it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. That's what they're saying. And Samantha Powers, the one that's also involved with the Ukraine, this lady is batshit crazy. And it's put the Russians into, I was listening to Paul Craig Roberts. If you didn't catch the Greg Hunter, Paul Craig Roberts interview last night from the making of this video, I suggest you go watch it, because there's some very valuable stuff that he said in there. And it really does give you the idea of what if you don't know who Paul Craig Roberts is, he used to be kind of like right-hand man for Ronald Reagan. And that type of thing. So, this is a very big thing. So we're going to come back to it, but the key out of this is that it creates an insolvency for Russia and the United States and NATO to work together. It takes it off the table, because, and this buys time for the rebels. As I said, as Syria stabilizes, the surrounding nations such as Israel, Europe, they're already getting hit by the migrant crisis. Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, they will go down. They're going to get ripped apart from within. It's going to reverse. And the thing about Assad is, Assad a couple of weeks ago was saying Syria is going to fall, or Syria is going to retake in a couple of months. So in other words, like the Israeli airstrike, or attempted airstrike, or whatever it was, they had a drone and a fighter in the area. I heard an F-16. I don't know if that's what it was. It got shot down by the Assad government. The Israelis have denied it, and there's for good reason. Now, maybe I'm right or wrong on this, but I was sure that Israel was a part of NATO, but maybe they're not. If they're not, again, is what it is. But the thing is that Israel and the United States have a pretty much death pact, that Israel will never come to the aid of the United States, but Israel with the Samson option is, I can't remember how many, basically they're willing to have, for every one Israeli life, they're willing to sacrifice up to 35 or 38 American lives. So in other words, Israel, they're going to use you as cannon fodder. And pretty much all the wars in the Middle East are banker wars and Israeli wars, because of the Greater Israel Project. But I don't think it's going to work. That's the thing. I think they've not losing control. I think they've lost control of this. Now, the thing about that is, when we get back to this again, UN airstrike is not the biggest news, because we don't know if it was a UN airstrike on a food convoy or not. But the rumor was that there was enough food for 80,000 people in Aleppo and stuff like that. So that leaves us with, about 80,000 people, if that was real. So with that said, it's kind of like, okay, well, if there's, sorry, I'm a little bit disorganized here. I'm sure I wrote that down in here. So if there was enough food for 80,000, again, it's not confirmed whether it was hit by Russia or not, but that's, of course, Russia gets blamed anyway. Assad gets blamed anyway. The rebels would have done it if it was the legitimate thing anyway, or they would have stolen it. Usually, it most likely probably was Russia or Syria hitting it, because the rebels will usually steal the food and then, whatever, and then extort the people, right? So, but the thing is this also causes more suffrage to the Syrian people that they can blame on Assad, right? You get the idea. So, this is why I'm more thinking that the rebels would have done it. Maybe the United States done it. Maybe Israel done it. Who knows? It could have been caught in a crossfire. Turkey could have done it. We don't know, if that's what it was. So that's something to keep an eye on. Nobody can confirm it 100%. The U.S. talking about putting sanctions on China over the North Korean missile test, because they're believing that the missiles that North Korea is firing are Chinese-made missiles, which most likely are, because the North Koreans really don't have that much of a development program, although they do have some. But then again, the North Koreans are probably just reverse-engineered Chinese technology, which is reverse-engineered older Russian technology, a lot of it. But some of the new Chinese technology is actually new. So the North Koreans aren't really using new stuff. They're using older designs. They're probably also working with Iran, Iranian scientists and stuff like that in the long end of it. Moving down. The Haiti Clinton Fund. Again, the president of Haiti out there begging Donald Trump to basically publicly ask Hillary Clinton in front of the citizens of the United States in the debate to ask her about the fund. So I mean, I think this debate that's coming up between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump is going to be, if they let it happen, is going to be something spectacular. Donald Trump is bringing a B-52 load of bombs to drop on Hillary Clinton, for sure. Hillary Clinton's flying in there with an unarmed Cessna. You know what I mean? Like, this is really setting the lamb to like a slaughter of lions. It really, it's not even going to be fair. I don't have any empathy for Hillary Clinton whatsoever because she's such an evil person. But geez, it's going to be a slaughter. It's going to be a slaughter, in the debate. Like, there's nothing Hillary Clinton has other than yelling racist, bigot, xenophobe, alt-right, Pepe the Frog memes at Donald Trump. She's got nothing. She's got nothing at all. So if Donald Trump sticks to his fashion, I think it should be a pretty lopsided, one-sided debate. So I don't know how they're going to spin it. They're going to have to spin it to make Hillary Clinton look good. What they normally do up here in Canada with the CBC is, and they're even getting so-called Republicans for Hillary Clinton on the. Again, they're clearly campaigning for Hillary Clinton up here in Canada too, which we shouldn't even be involved in that. Non-biased. This is why the CBC needs to be privatized, is because of stuff like that. I think people are seeing it. So there's just it's not fair coverage. They cover Donald Trump for like 20-second sound bites to demonize him and everything Hillary. Well, these are allegations. They're not proving it. It's so obvious right now. But anyway, keep going. Shrinking U.S. Army wants citizen soldiers ready to fight. 4,200 units from the National Guard. So basically, the National Guard, they want to take the U.S. National Guard, which, like all National Guards, are for domestic use only. They want to be able to take these guys overseas because they don't have enough guys to fight overseas. Why would they even be making provisions for that? Because they know the fight's coming. It might be sooner than we think. Hopefully not, but we'll have to wait and see. The draft I don't think is going to take. The leftists aren't going to sign up for the military at all. The right-wingers, are now becoming too smart for the U.S. military-industrial complex. That they're like, no, these are bankers' wars. These are wars for Israel. We don't want that. That type of thing. The Israelis are Operation Razos. I think it's how it's pronounced. In Sunland. To the Israeli, it's an operation to the near the Gaza. Basically, what they're doing is they're bringing tanks. After the jet and the drone was reported to have been shot down in Syria, they've been building up on the Golan Heights, basically, or the Gaza Strip. Sorry, the Gaza Strip as well, waiting for retaliation from the Palestinians. So they're bringing tanks there. This is kind of not new. But they're putting assets in place if things go hot in Israel. And next to that, you have France getting prepared for a civil war to fight the migrants. I already covered that in my 10th Crusade video as a war plan. And there tends to be a gas shortage in the east coast of the United States. Apparently a pipeline burst or something like that. But that could be an excuse too. I think the gas shortage might be a symptom of something else. There's a lot going on in the world. Yes, there's a lot of freighters sitting in the ocean right now in that harbors full of oil, and it's getting to the point where people are now having to pay to keep that excess oil. Like every bucket and pail and barrel and freighter is just full of oil right now. All that oil that Saudi Arabia has been pumping, and everybody's been pumping out to destabilize Russia, to destabilize Canada here. It's now costing them money to store it in these freighters. So this is also hurting the Saudi Arabians big time. Their economy's in major trouble. Plus, with the war with the Houthis and stuff like that, which is pretty bad for them. Again, I believe Saudi Arabia is definitely getting thrown under the bus. Like I said, they would be. They did. It's just Saudi Arabia has a few blackmail cards of their own, such as 9/11. Again, the Saudis out there saying, if you let the 9/11 family sue us, we'll dump U.S. treasuries and basically flood it back to the States, which will create hyperinflation, which could also possibly create an economic collapse globally. And of course, if anybody was a betting man yesterday and they bet against the Fed, they probably made off like bandits. I kind of almost wish I knew how to play the stock market. I'd be making, again, they're never going to, they were supposed to raise interest rates 4 times this year by 1%, a quarter of 1%, and they can't even do that. They want to make a rate hike in the States. They've been talking about it, and they're going to talk about it every time, but they can't. They just can't. The economy will implode. If it was such a great economy, they could say, we could do a 3% rate hike. You know what I mean? Like here in Canada, we were up at 2%, 3%. Now it's like cut in half. After the oil crisis thing, we shouldn't have cut our interest rates at all. That was too early of a reaction. It should be mandatory at least 1% interest rate. But they don't want interest rates. They want negative interest rates, which you could say is user fees. They want to charge you to hold your money in the bank. They already do that here in Canada. Can it work? I'm not opposed to the negative interest rates in that sense, of side of the interest rates where banks charge fees. You want to use the Interac machine? We'll charge you a fee. Okay, fair enough. You want to do, store XYZ amount of money in there? Okay, we're going to take a small fee per month, maybe $2 to up to $10, depending on how much you have in there. I'm okay with banks charging fees because they need to make money. That's the whole reason why they go insolvent, is because they don't make money. But I also believe that banks, again, should not get bailouts at all or bail-ins, that type of thing. So you can't insure their deposits. You can't insure the deposits. Therefore, the banks need to be accountable for their actions, and that type of thing, and put people in jail when they do fail. Again, if we could ever get a nationalist government that puts Canada first in power, restore the Bank of Canada back to its former self pre-Pierre Elliott Trudeau, we could probably see growth in the banking system again. That would also allow savings to grow again. Because again, when I was a kid, if you had like 10 grand in your bank, you were starting to see, probably $20 a month in interest. That's nothing, sure, but it's a couple of $100, maybe not quite that high, but I remember getting interest, watching the interest rate as a kid. I remember my first bank account, which I accidentally still using the same account, and watching, my $10 get like 2 cents interest on it or something like that because I left it in there, and it was rewarding good behavior. Now people who have like 100,000 in there, then it starts to add up $1 million. Then it really starts to snowball. I remember at one point people were talking about, if you were a humble person, you might not be able to live off the interest, but the interest was over $1 million was a nice, a nice supplement. And the average person, believe it or not, doesn't take as long to get to $1 million as you would think over the lifespan. Most people are going to spend like $2 or $3 million in their lifespan in North America. If you add up $1 million, 10 grand a year for 100 years. Okay, so if you're making 20 grand a year in 50 years, you'll have made $1 million. If you make 30 grand a year, and so every 20 or 30 years, you make about $1 million. Now, if you make, say, 40 grand a year or whatever and save a lot of that, you can snowball it. You used to be able to snowball it. Now you can't because, they're taking all your money away. Next to that, Pakistan and India exchanged a little bit of fire over Kashmir. Again, that's been an ongoing battle for decades and decades and decades, and it's still going. They are worried about nukes in Pakistan. So again, there's no shortage of powder kegs. So we have to keep an eye on that. There's a military chief, Sir, I'm not kidding on the name here, Mike Jackson, not Michael Jackson, but Sir Mike Jackson, a military chief, is saying Russia would completely destroy Britain in a war. They're just not ready to take on Russia as a member of NATO. They just can't do it. So they need to basically get on that and beef up everything. Well, the thing is that and when we get back to the whole thing going on with Russia and the United States over Syria, so the U.S., Turk, Saudi. I'll get back to that. This one's a very important one. Okay. The Russians are sending an aircraft carrier to the Mediterranean. The Saudis are on the verge of a collapse. Somebody brought this up again on my channel. Remember back in 2000, again, this is why I say don't be afraid to go over some of my old World War III updates, because something that happens back then might be relevant now. Now, there are rumors that there's a nuke or nukes floating around Syria. Who has them, I'm not exactly sure, that type of thing. But remember there was Dias Air Force Base, the 5 or 6 nukes that went missing there, one reportedly to have been detonated 600 miles off the coast of Charleston. in the ocean. The Russians picked it up as seismic activity of an underwater nuclear explosion. And the other 5 nukes are still at large. We don't know where these nukes are. They just walked off of Dyess Air Force Base. And the Israelis were reported, I guess, last year to have been detonating dirty bombs in the desert. Whether that, it hasn't been confirmed. So it's something out there, and we still have these nukes missing, and there's rumors of a nukes in Syria. What would they use it for, really? I don't know. They would have to use it against Israel itself, or against Saudi Arabia, or against Turkey, or against Jordan, or Oman, or one of those places. They would have to use, or Egypt. They would have to use it there because they have to use it to blame Assad. They have to, they're not going to use it for ISIS unless they want to use that as okay, the job's done here. Syria has fallen. ISIS has now just did a nuclear attack, so we have to send in boots on the ground ASAP. All NATO goes in there, 20,000 troops. We're going to sweep the country, kill ISIS in like 15 days or something like that. And they can do that. They can do that. The reason why ISIS doesn't fall is because the United States keeps propping them up. Again, airlift after. Again, is ISIS the luckiest jihadist group in history to come across 2,300 Humvees, 70,000 small arms, hundreds of millions of rounds, finding U.S.-made TOW missiles in Syria when Syria never used U.S.-made TOW missiles. To have Saudi Arabia constantly and Turkey constantly giving them weapons and crossing the borders. Israel treating ISIS in their hospitals and giving them medals. They just call them moderate rebels whenever they cross. Airstrikes in favor of al-Nusra and ISIS and all them. Just happened to accidentally hit the Syrian army. Again, that type of thing. Again, it goes on. These airdrops, 15 airdrops at even the Iraqis, after shooting down a U.S. helicopter last year or the year before, dropping weapons to ISIS. Again, think about these transport aircraft. The guys, it's the same thing with the intelligence on the airstrikes. Can collateral damage happen? Yes. Can friendly fire incidents happen? Yes. They can make that extent. But to have all these different NATO members, which I mentioned, hit an airstrike on the Syrian army that precisely, again, mistakes do get, yes, hospitals are getting hit, but these things I don't think are getting hit by accident. That's the thing. They are getting hit deliberately. So when we think about these guys that are doing the Globemaster transport airplane airdrops and helicopter, particularly helicopter airdrops, they're low enough. They know where they are. But they're doing these airdrops and it keeps going to ISIS. You know what I mean? Like, it's like these guys don't make that mistake. These guys navigate over the North Pole. Okay, where instrumentation doesn't work, they can navigate that. They don't miss their target. They hit exactly where they're told to drop. So either the intelligence is bad, okay, or they're deliberately, 15 times or whatever. God knows that's just the times that are probably known about. Accidentally dropping weapons to ISIS that many times, and then of course finding Abrams tanks and but that was just stuff that was left behind the Iraq War. Okay, do you think they were really that lucky that when 5,000 or so jihadists told the Iraqis, get out of the Mosul or we're going to run right over the top of you, and they just dropped their weapons and left them for the ISIS guys? Do you think 20,000 guys are going to stand down to these jihadists when they outpower them? No, it was a plan. That's how the idea is to make it look like an accident that these guys are getting the weapons. It's not. It's a plan. And again, we had 2 Mossad agents that have been arrested. These are the guys in the propaganda photos, riding on the U.S. Humvees and stuff like that. The one guy's a little older than the other. But the thing is these 2 generals say, no, we created ISIS. Again, John McCain. These are my buddies. Direct linkage. There's nobody's hiding this fact that the ISIS is created by the United States and Israel and all that. But anyway, yeah. So. Remember Ronald Reagan talked about the lunatics in the basement, the neocon lunatics? You could say George W. Bush Sr. opened the door to those lunatics after Ronald Reagan. You could say Bill Clinton summoned them, and then you could say George W. Bush let these freak bastards go, and you could say Obama let them flourish. But these were guys like Kissinger, Brzezinski, the list goes on. These are the lunatics in the basement. The neocons that are just completely insane. Now, the reason why this is important now, Ronald Reagan, love him or hate him, he was the highest rated president in the United States, something 54% approval rating, which holds no candle to Putin, which is in the 80s or 90s, which even if you cut that in half is BS, it's still phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. Whereas, okay, nobody holds to Kim Jong-un. He got 243% of the vote last time. And his approval rating is 412%. That's Kim Jong-un. But that said, the lunatics that he was talking about back then are the people that we have to worry about now. These are the real crazies that we have to worry about now. They're just insane. These people, again, getting back to the meeting in Syria, like Samantha Power and stuff like that, these people, the Russians are looking at them and like, it's insolvent. We can't negotiate with these people at all. These people are completely insane. So Russia's contingency plan is, at some point, we're going to either, like, the Russians know that for them, they know that the United States wants Russia or China to strike first. That's why Russia and China won't strike first. They know that if they wait this one out, they could take quite a few hits. Like I say, they shoot down a couple of Russian, let's think a warship, they shoot down a couple of Russian fighters, whatever. They can get back at them in other ways. But the biggest end prize for the Russians is to let the U.S. economy just implode. It's the slow bleed out. There will be, and I've been consistent on it, there will be no economic collapse until war comes. Why? There was no rate hike yesterday. So they're going to kick the can down the road. But the problem is people are starting to notice that they're becoming more poor. This is why the U.S. is so desperate to get their war going, because people are going to start to revolt pretty soon. And then they're going to have real problems on their hand for the pitchfork revolution. Now, most people have no idea who's really orchestrating this, and they'll blame Russia and China, but they're going to take it out on the U.S. government. This is why, but the thing is this is also what's, for the people who know what's going on, call them hellhounds, call them spooks with a conscience. We see the first wave of them going full bore in the Congress, and they're even going after the CIA, the FBI, whatever, in the Congress to try to, hold these people accountable. If that fails, they go to stage 2 hellhounds, which start knocking people off. Stage 3 hellhounds is a military coup in the United States, which I believe after the election when Hillary Clinton wins, they'll probably do that, if they don't kill Hillary Clinton first to cancel the election. Again, it's a dirty game. We're going to see it play out one way or the other. That said, Finland and Sweden are both on high alert. Same with Germany and France and a few other nations. But Sweden is now moving 150 soldiers to the Gotland Islands. First time in 10 years. They're bringing tanks and APCs, etc., preparing for a war with Russia. Because Sweden is on the fence. I don't know if they've done it yet. If you're from Sweden, you can let me know. And the same with Finland, whether they're going to join NATO or not. But Russia has said, because of the drills Russia just did, if you didn't see these things, they were massive. They were throughout, it was all the Russian armed forces pulling together, which looks like an invasion force. But really the strategy Russia has is, because Russia is such a big territory, they can't hold all the ground. They have to take it in pieces and reestablishment and then go and take it somewhere else. So when they practice, it looks like a big invasion. But they did do a simulated nuke strike on Sweden. Again, as a message to Sweden, you join NATO, we have a warhead just for you. And I don't know why Sweden would even consider, they don't need to, again, I can understand a European alliance or the EU, new NATO, which we'll get to that. They're saying that they don't want this new EU army because NATO's saying they're going to veto it. Even Britain is thinking of vetoing, even though they're kind of out, with the Brexit. Again, it's going to take them forever to get out of the Brexit. I don't think they're really ever going to get let go from the EU. By the time it kicks in, a new government will come around and say, no, we're going to reverse the decision, which will definitely destabilize Britain. But the thing is that what they're saying is, no, NATO does not want a new EU army because that can challenge NATO. Well, it'll challenge the funding more than anything. But I think the Europeans, they're looking at this as NATO is what's going to get them into a third world war. The Europeans they know what war is like on their continent. They don't want it again. And, the first time wasn't big enough, the second time wasn't big enough, the third time will be the charm, and this one will engulf all of Europe. There will be no safe havens in Europe once the angry bear starts charging, that type of thing. So that's something to keep in, and again, the Russians, don't really, they're looking at this, they're like, we know it's inevitable. I mean, they're telling us it's inevitable. We're going to go to war on the, like Putin said, have you realized what you've done? you've put us on the highest tensions since, like the Cold War. This dwarfs anything that's going on during the Cold War. Like the Cold War was actually more paranoia and propaganda than action. There's a lot of action in the second one. More bomber incursions from Russia than they've ever done in history each year. It gets bigger. Usually they do 2 or 3, maybe 4 during the first Cold War. Bear bombers will fly from Russia to Cuba and buzz the U.S. border. Just do a bit of saber rattle. The Russians, yeah, they saber rattle too. They're not innocent in this as well. But what they're showing is we will respond. And yes, sometimes they come out of the corner first just to say, okay, well, we know you're about to do something, so they preemptively send Bear bombers. But now it's like in the 60s to the hundreds, between 60 and 100 some odd incursions each year. It's almost on a daily basis where NATO is intercepting Russian bombers or fighters or whatever. A lot of times it's in international waters and international airspace, but a lot of times too the Russians are flying right along the borders for provocation, just as a show of force to say, we are there, we are there. And this is more not towards the United States. This is more to the European countries. See how frequent and how much it is costing you to come and get our 1950s Tupolev Bear. And it's a pain in the ass every time the Danes have to go up with their F-16s to intercept us. It's a pain in the ass every time the British Typhoons have to come up and intercept us. And it's very costly. And this is just an excursion once or twice a week. Can you imagine 500 of these coming at you? You will not be able to counter it. And the Russian air power in Eastern Europe will not be able to be quailed. Now, that said, this is why I tell the Eastern Europeans, be careful because they are slating you for destruction. They want the war in Eastern Europe. There's also the Russians and the Chinese are now doing anti-submarine drills in the South China Sea. This is basically, as a response to all the drills going on and all that. Now, yeah. So, right now, like a Trump win, okay, this is something that who was saying this one? If Trump wins, Assad wins. If Trump wins, okay, Trump will work with the Russians. In other words, he'll be working with Russia and Assad to stabilize Syria, okay, which will kill the petrodollar. Because this is what John Kerry was talking about. If they don't retake Syria, if they don't do regime change in Syria, the petrodollar could fail. Because then they can't get into Iran. Again, with the unity government over there in Libya, they're ditching the petrodollars they can. It's not working over there to sell oil outside the U.S. dollar. That's going to catch on globally. And then people say, well, if people take money in other sell their oil in other currencies, again, why is Canada selling our oil in U.S. dollars? You know what I mean? There's no need for it. Again, Canada could be a world superpower if we become nationalist, and not a nuclear superpower by choice. And if we decide to be a nuclear superpower, which I don't think we need to, I'm not opposed to the long-range missiles, but I am opposed to the nukes, the warheads. I don't mind the deterrence, but to a degree, right? Now that said, I guess that brings us back full circle again. I guess I'm done with this one. So now what we got. North Korea again working on a new type of rocket for their warheads. I'm not sure what this rocket is. We talked about the gas price gouging going on in the east coast of the U.S. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That brings me. I'm going to talk about Paul Craig Roberts. He was saying one thing about back when he was working for Reagan, okay, Reagan did kind of, basically the Berlin Wall and all that fell on his watch, right? It was Reagan that kind of dialed back the Cold War a bit. Maybe not just him, but, people in his camp. And Reagan did have a lot of neocons, a.k.a. the lunatics in the basement that were working against him. But even George Bush Sr., had a de-escalation of nukes a bit with Russia. And George W. Bush had the agreement where Russia, now mind you, it was still a ridiculous number, no more than 1,600 nuclear delivery vehicles, air, land, sea, it didn't matter, delivery from either Russia or the United States. And they agreed on this. Now all that's been thrown out the window, going from George W. Bush to Obama. It's now off the table. it was Reagan that, or not Reagan, but before Reagan, not Lyndon Johnson. Anyway, worked with Khrushchev, whoever it was, Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, and then whoever. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. They went and worked with Khrushchev, said, we'll pull back our missile systems if you de-escalate. So the people in the First Cold War were a lot smarter. They actually didn't want a war. There was a lot of rhetoric, yes, military-industrial complex, whatever, but there was a little bit of a stranglehold on Washington enough so that they wouldn't get so far out of control. Now, of course, Bill Clinton changed all that by putting missile systems back into Turkey, which you could arguably say got the precursors. Now, the real start of the new Cold War definitely starts in 2010 with Medvedev saying, pull back the missile systems from NATO, must pull back the missile systems, or we could see problems. And then, of course, the big kickoff is the Ukraine. Now, what the U.S. was trying to do there was to basically, like with Afghanistan, with it's Brzezinski's grand chessboard. What they want to do is get an Eastern Europe war going with Russia to wear out the Russian troops so that NATO can just come in and once they figure Russia's weak enough, they come in and do it that way. Because they can't do regime change in Russia. It's too much of an impossibility at this point. And if they do assassination, I mean, Putin is the moderate, believe it or not. Some of the guys that might replace him could be, really crazy Cold War KGB guys that would be, basically come in and say, we're not having it, hit button. You know what I mean? They would respond. Putin is smart. He doesn't respond directly. He responds covertly, and he also responds by not responding. That's the best response the Russians have. It's their best strategy. But they know with the buildup of NATO and all these missile systems, like they've said in 2010, we reserve the strike to preemptively strike these. The right to preemptively strike these NATO missile systems if Russia can't defend itself. And this is what the United States is doing. They're putting Russia into a situation where they can't defend themselves. At some point, they're going to have no choice, right? They're going to have no choice. Now, these are the slightly older warheads, but they still have them. The SS-18s. Paul Craig Roberts points it out very well. One SS-18 can take out like a massive area. What did I get here? Basically, it can take out one missile with 10 warheads can pretty much take out New York State. These warheads coming out, they'll definitely take out New York City. That's no problem. That's just one SS-18. How many hundreds of these things do they have? You know what I mean? There's just, we're talking thousands of warheads. We're talking planet smashers. And then, of course, this new Sarmat missile is just unbelievable. So I'm going to go back to Syria, and we'll end up on that. Again, there's just so much to say here. I'll try to end it up on this. Last night, or the night before, whether this is real or not, it came from Sputnik News, and it looks like they pulled down the article. I don't know if it's right. Out of the Caspian Sea, 3 Caliber missiles. These are the newest Russian, or maybe not newest, but newer Russian missiles were fired, and they killed up to 30 intelligence officers. U.S., Turkish, Saudi, Qatari, British, Israeli, in Dazazur, or Dazara, Darazera, can't pronounce it. And this missile, these things are accurate. This was not a blunder on the Russian side. This was a message. And if this is true, again, I'm pretty sure, like I said, right from day one, from when the Russians got in there, there's probably dead Mossad and CIA and whatever agents all throughout Syria that keep getting killed. You're never going to hear about these guys because they're covert. The United States can't say, "Oh, you killed our spies." You know what I mean? They can't say that. And the Russians can't say, "Well, you killed our spies." They can't say that. But this is deliberate. Now, if this is true, this is Russia directly attacking not one but several NATO countries. This could provoke an Article 5. That's the type of black swan I'm talking about. This is Russia calling a bluff. Well, you killed our guys, we're going to kill your guys. You know what I mean? So either you're going to work with us, or we're going to, the Russians know that, 30 guys, we're not going to go to a thermonuclear war over 30 guys. They know that, not over Syria. The American people won't have it. They'll lynch the parliament. The Russian people won't have it. They'll lynch the Duma. You know what I mean? They just won't. They won't do it. They know that. They know they can push it that far. But that said, that is definitely pushing. That's definitely one-upmanship, or more like two-upmanships. Again, the Russians calling the bluff. It's like chick and mate. Again, you killed our guys. We just deliberately killed your guys, and we're not calling it an accident. So we'll have to see how that one plays out. Again, the fact that the article got pulled down very shortly after I read it, and again, thank you guys for sending me this stuff. Is it true? Is it not? A lot of people say no, that the Russians would never do that. Some of my comments, I can't believe they would do that though, because that would invoke Article 5. Well, Russia is going to have to call the bluff. Again, like I said, the Chinese, when they call a bluff, it's 50-50. If they win everything. If they lose, well, they didn't lose much. They tried, and they'll go back to the drawing board. With the Russians, it's all or none. If we win the table. If we lose an arm. You know what I mean? They've got skin in the game. Now, the thing is, what this is sending to them is that, and I guess this is what the Russians have already been doing anyway, this is why ISIS cannot take Syria. They will not take Syria in the long run. This is going to go on for a long time, but the thing is now, Putin is now at a stage where he's starting to show NATO, we will respond. This is your warnings. The Russians, they've had plenty of time to respond. Shooting down the Turkish, the Russian jet, they could have responded to Turkey full nuclear force if they want. Over one or two pilots, no, they're not going to do that. That said, they also, because of international law, and after the airstrike, Putin went to the United Nations for international law. Of course, you had Samantha Power. This lady is complete, utter nutbag evil. George Soros, Victoria Nuland, Samantha Powers, these are really bad people. These people, even if you could just say they were incompetent, they are nuts. They are flirting, they're basically in a pissing contest with people who can respond. And again, I get it from time to time on my channel. Oh, Russia will kick the shit out of the United States. Yeah, but there'll be 5 people left on the planet to say victory. This is what, Russia and China are powerful enough militaries. It will not be a walk in the park. It will not be a 3-week war. World War I was supposed to last 2 weeks, 3 weeks max. 4 years later. World War II was supposed to only last 6 months tops. World War III probably won't last more than a week, 2 weeks tops, because there's nothing left after 2 weeks. The Chinese have said it, the Russians have said it, if we're losing, we're burning down Moscow. We can't have it, nobody can. Meaning, if they think they're losing, they will launch their nukes. And no, the Patriot missile system and the THAAD system, whatever, just an upgraded version of the PAC-3 missile, isn't good enough. And even if they were 100% accurate, the problem is there's just not enough of them to intercept the Russian missiles before they can even get into the atmosphere. They cannot intercept them all. They can't even detect them. These things are, the Russians have nuclear missiles on wheels. These things move around every 20 minutes. You'll never catch them. Topol-Ms, there's at least 188 of those things in service. They got 10 more divisions coming. Iskanders can be, they've got a couple of hundred of those, I believe. These things will be knock out coastal shipping like that. They don't even have to put nukes on them, but they can. These Caliber missiles, again, once again have seemed to prove themselves that they can not only come in undetected. Remember, their first battery was something like 29 or 30 Caliber missiles came in last year. All angles, almost undetectable. Nap of the earth, flying 10 feet above the ground type of thing, through valleys and crevices. Every one of them hit their target. The Russians' equipment is good enough. The Russians can jam the Israelis. The Israelis can, again, the high-tech stuff goes in 2 weeks. The satellites are shot down. The Russians have already proved they can shoot down satellites. Yes, you can shoot down Russian satellites, but the Ratnik system, it works a little different than what the NATO system is, because NATO is more reliant on satellite than the Russians are. The Russians in an analog war, they still might not win, but they're more likely to win in an analog war, because it becomes like a 1970s game at that point, where you really don't know where the enemy is until either they're in the envelope of your radar, or you accidentally come around the corner. Here's 20 Abrams tanks coming around the corner to meet 50 T-72s or T-90s or whatever. The T-90 with its reactive armor seems to be working very well in Syria. They seem to be surviving the TOW missile hits. The Abrams don't seem to be surviving the TOW missile hits. The new T-14 isn't in service yet, but it will be in service probably by 2018 if we make it that far. That said, the Russians, again, are looking and have come to the conclusion that they cannot negotiate their way to diplomatically out of Syria with the Americans. They cannot diplomatically get away from war from the United States. The United States wants war with Russia. So Russia has to look at this now and say, okay, we're trying, we've tried, we know it's inevitable, let's brace for the impact. They may, again, the United States government is, and the people have to wake up to this. If we don't stop this madness, we all die. The world elites think they can just hide in the bunkers, let the rubble settle, come back and start the system again. That will be their tombs. Anybody that survives will be hunting down the Kissingers and the Brzezinskis and the George Soroses, the Clintons, the Bushes, the Obamas, and the list goes on. This is where I believe right now, if there is a plea to law enforcement, military, it is arrest these world elites, one charge, crimes against humanity. You have to restore rule of law. You can't resort to stage 2 hellhounds, because if you do, then it just makes it a free-for-all and we fall into a dictatorship or whatever, or it destabilizes. Yes, you assassinate this guy, but then the guy that might fill his boots might be twice as crazy. So you have to put these people in jail and keep working your way down the list. And I do believe that stage is coming, because we're already seeing the first stage. But the third stage is basically if the American soldiers believe that they are going to war and we're on the brink, and this comes after the Putin crazy man. I'll probably have to do a supplement video to this. Yeah, I'll do a supplement video to this. Hey, hi, and welcome. That's bright. Just woke up. I had a bit of a rude awakening this morning. But anyway, that's the way life goes. So, okay, World War III update. Got lots of stuff to cover here. And not very well organized either, so... keep my hair from sticking up anymore. Alright, so, okay. Hang on. This one is pretty important one, too. Yeah, I'm going to put that one last. I'm going to go with this one. Okay, yeah, where do I start with all this? There's so much going on right now. And the reason why this one's so important is that, see what Alex shows here, shuffle my papers, is that it gives you an idea of just how intense we are in comparison to what we were during the Cold War. During the Cold War, there was a lot of rhetorics and stuff like that, but we're now, you know, it is a proxy war in the sense what's going on in Syria. And people have to understand that it's not a war against Assad, it's a war against Russia and China. And the main responders in it is Russia and China's in the vaccines. And we got to go back to that airstrike the other night, because there's been a lot happening since then. Now, right now, the distraction, I'm just going to close that curtain a bit. The distraction on the TV, is the terrorist attack, which they're not calling a terrorist attack completely because they don't want to damage the, again, in the States, 800 refugees showed up, or claimant refugees showed up, and they made them citizens automatically. So they want to keep people to do stuff like that, and people are already pissed enough as it is. So they're covering this, the bombings in New York and New Jersey and the other place there, and the stabbing very lightly. Again, they will, they call it terrorism, but it's not global terrorism. It's not ISIS. It's just a domestic terrorist. It's terrorism. people aren't going to be that. They're not easy to do that much. Holy jeez. So that's the distraction that everybody's following. Meanwhile, again, I haven't heard it on the mainstream media at all. Is not so much the airstrike in Syria that killed Syrian soldiers, but it's what's happened in the past couple of days. You could see the escalation and build-up. I always said that World War III will break out as a black swan event, and I'm still holding to that because we don't know what's going to happen. And I still say it won't happen until after Putin plays the wild man, which he hasn't done yet, although the deliberate things that have happened in the past night or two can be a sign of getting ready for that. It's a build-up to the crazy man, the wild man, that, oh my God, the world's going to take notice. We have to go back to Putin's speech where last month, I guess it was, or a couple of weeks ago anyway, where he was saying, have you realized what you've done? You've broken every treaty. You've got us on the brink. Russia will respond. Back off. Are you guys insane? Et cetera, et cetera. How do we get? What can we say to get through to you? We're not messing around. So let's go back to the airstrike. The airstrike, okay, was coming out on the deal where the United States will not release the minutes for the meeting with John Kerry and Lavrov and all of them over the Syrian agreement. The Russians want it released, and they don't want to release the information. Because I think what's going to happen is the Russians, what they've been doing is, you tell us who the moderate rebels are and we won't hit them. The problem is the moderate rebels are the ISIS guys. Okay, Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda turned into Al-Nusra, Al-Nusra is now Al-Asham or whatever, and then ISIS is now Daesh or whatever. And it goes and it goes. They just keep changing the name. But they all, al-Baghdadi's still the leader of, this is John McCain's buddies. These are all, this is all because, Syria would not be burning if it wasn't for U.S. foreign policy and Israeli foreign policy for the Greater Israel Project. And again, if you don't know about the Greater Israel Project, you need to go look into that, and then you'll understand the Middle East perfectly. Everything they were talking about during the Greater Israel Project is not a coincidence that we're seeing what we're seeing now. It is a byproduct of the plan that was put in. Again, it's agitation to get it to do this, rather than direct. It's not so direct. That's why they call it a proxy war. It's not direct. They try to hide the links as much as possible, but it's showing up in the weaponry, with the more U.S.-made weaponry that is in the hands of the rebels, that type of thing. The fact that these rebels are so intertwined with what was called the moderate opposition. There was a Free Syrian Army at one point, but it got hijacked clearly. So these are all radical jihadists, but they're really a proxy army to overthrow Assad. That's all they are. And that airstrike that hit Assad's positions, this is the third time this has happened, was to do something that Russia was going for. Again, Russia was calling a bluff here. What they were saying was, you tell us who the moderate rebels are, we won't hit them, but then they could point out, you're backing these guys are guys who are terrorists. That's why they keep taking things, like Al-Qaeda is no longer on the terrorist watch list in the States. They're not on there. Why? Because whenever it comes out that, yes, these guys are being backed and paid for by the United States, then, they weren't even on the terrorist watch list. They were on there and they took them off, because people are now figuring out who's backing it. And at this point, I don't know how anybody can, if you're not following it, I get it. It sounds unbelievable, but when you understand, if you've been following these World War III updates, you pretty much get a good picture of what's going on. If you understand the Syrian war as, regime change, that's one thing. You still probably won't understand why the United States and Israel and all of them, and 40 other European nations, and unfortunately Canada too, why we're backing ISIS. And then on the other hand, say we've got to fight terror. You won't understand it. But if you understand it as a war against Russia and China, the world being divided into two, the Anglo-American transatlantic petrodollar empire versus the Eurasian Pacific, China, India, Russia, Iran, and the BRICS nations as the other empire fighting for supremacy, then you understand more what's going on in Syria in the longer game. It's probably even more complicated than that, but to dumb it down. So in this airstrike, the Australians, the UK, Turkey, and I think a few others did that airstrike together. Now, the reason why they did this is very simple. The Russians were really demanding two things in this meeting. The first thing they were demanding was, tell us who the moderate rebels are. Now, they're doing that as a call of bluff, because they know as soon as you start pointing out who the moderate rebels are, you're telling us, they're going to be basically saying, yes, we're backing ISIS. So that's why they keep changing the name of ISIS. So it's like, okay, you're going to call yourselves this now, and we're going to say, no, this is the new moderate group. And that's why the U.S. keeps changing the name of the moderate rebels. That they keep changing. And then as soon as people catch on that, okay, this is not the... And again, you can track it.